Hello and welcome to the Transfer Flow. And on today's episode, we take a look at the Manchester derby, which ended in a 3-0 win for Man City. But are there reasons for optimism in United's defeat and reasons for pessimism in City's victory? Then we look at Juve, who beat Inter 4-3 in the Derby d'Italia. What are we learning about a new look Serie A right now? And why do I hate Juventus? Then we talk about Villa. Is Unai Emery having trouble in his third season? We discuss set piece coaching and how analytics people can make a difference behind the scenes at big clubs. And finally, we finish up with Hansi Flick's thoughts on Lamine Yamal. That's all on today's episode of the Transfer Flow. Okay, so we've got a full roster for the podcast today, and joining me to make my way through it is Ted Knutson. How are you doing, Ted?
There were 2,500 words in the newsletter today because I was excited about football again. And then we go into 3 straight days of the Champions League, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday this week. If you're not on variance betting, there's going to be a ton of content there. We're back on the Champions League. We're going to be on the Premier League and Championship in the coming weeks too. Going to remind people of why we do this and how, it's different than what you probably do around your local shops. Yeah, I'm stoked. It's nice to have football back, even if I could have used an extra week of games before having to deal with this Champions League set of lines, because I'm like, I don't know, and I'm paid to know.
Well, also, though, these Champions League games are principally useful so that we can try and work out what these teams actually are at this stage. But for you and me, who are required to tell people what we already think about these teams, we're like, I don't know. I need to watch 6 more games of these sides before I know anything at all. But,
it's the same instance as my kids
Chelsea.
Expect me to have opinions about everything, and I'm like, I don't know. Why would I know this? And they're like, well, my teachers always know things. I'm like, okay, well, fine. They lied to you.
You have an opinion, right. I'm sure. You have an opinion. It might not be an educated opinion, but you got an opinion.
And a lot of times I don't have opinions. I haven't had time to form an opinion. I'm perfectly capable of saying, I don't fucking know.
There's honestly a tiny set of things about which I do not have an opinion. My main job is opinion haver, I guess. But look, today we're going to have some opinions because actually, like we said, a bunch of these teams we're still working out what they are, and so each game kind of moves things around a little bit. And over the weekend, we had the Manchester derby. I thought it was very interesting, Ted, that you started the newsletter by saying, a lot of people said, everything I saw said that Man City weren't great in this game, because I kind of saw the opposite. I saw a lot of Pep's back. Pep heard you talking about him. The weird Humpty Dumpty graphic that we saw.
Magnificent for getting people to talk about it. I'm not sure that I understood who it was at first, but yeah, that was fun. Put all the pieces back together.
Sure. So anyway, there are conflicting narratives around this game. And to be honest, if you look at the data and not the scoreline, you can pretty much make whatever narrative you want out of it, because the data was it was not the conclusive, comprehensive, total control victory that you might expect to see after seeing the scoreline. It also is not, wow, Man United are hugely improved and everything's going right for them, especially not when you actually watch the game.
Right.
So what were your feelings looking at the data, looking at the scoreline, looking at the teams on the field? What stood out to you?
This is the best game I've ever seen Jeremy Doku play. I thought that he was basically unplayable, and that meant that Manchester United just couldn't keep up with that bit because he kept breaking him down over and over again.
Yeah.
When I look at the numbers for United, I see an attack that is dramatically improved, which you would kind of fucking hope so, given how much money they've spent on it over the last 2 windows. But then you see that the defense looks porous, and this was literally a drum that we banged throughout the entirety of the newsletter all summer long, which is that they have different problems they need to solve, and they're not addressing those at all. And they continue to not address them. And so now we've come into the season where Manchester United look better than last year in most of the metrics that we have. So they have a positive goal difference. Even by getting stumped by City, you kind of do have to take a little bit, or expected goal difference. You have to take a little bit on faith, because late they had a big rocket set of stuff where they had some good chances against City, but the match was done by them. So there are elements to discount there, but they're not as bad as they were last year in almost anything that we look at, but the defense is still not great. And last year, what happened a lot of the time was that they seemed to over defend at the cost of their attack while just trying to maintain solidity. Now they're trying to be transitional and add those elements, but they're not fully there, because they have holes. They either have tactical holes or they have holes in their personnel that don't allow them to continue to play the system. We've been saying, you've been saying, I've been saying, I mean, you've been saying, let them be bad forever, right? I've been saying, Kim's been saying, this is a multi-year rebuilding project. You have to get patient. And the thing that pushes people into the space of this is insane, why are United so bad all the time forever, is all of the talking heads from Manchester that happen to be in the media. And then there's Mark Goldbridge on the other side, just being like nonsensical about football because that's what gets him views on YouTube. And those people are very loud. And so they end up like after a Manchester derby where it's the big thing on Sky, they end up with like huge takes and overinflated things about how bad everybody is. And it's not like it was when I was there.
In the defense of people, though, who are going after Amorim after this game, if this was a match where it felt like it was solely individual quality that made the difference, and don't get me wrong, I think in midfield, in United's attack, I think it kind of was the issue. Because City were pressing Man United inside, but they had exactly the problem that we've talked about over the first few weeks of the season, right? Which is they're leaving their fullbacks with double duty. Yep. Like they've got to cover a winger, they've got to cover a high wing back against United. And this is a problem if a midfielder for United can receive the ball under pressure or can flip a pass in behind quickly or can really do any of the things that you would like a midfielder to be able to do in the Premier League. But because none of their midfielders can do any of those things, they were able to just press them inside, and really keep them channeled in the whole game. And still, United were able to get through at times against this City press, which was pretty bad. But the thing is, if it were just individual quality, then you could say, okay, yes, this is going to take years and years to rebuild. But there are tactical issues here that have been present since pretty much the first set of Amorim games and that are still present now, right? So the first goal that we're talking about, okay, Jeremy Doku kind of creates it out of nothing. Like, I mean, it's an incredible dribble. You don't expect somebody to beat a defender, like all ends up edge of the box like that. But it's created because he has that pocket of space between the midfield and the defense, right? And we've seen this time and time again that teams will pin United centre-backs deep. They don't compensate on the far side, and you end up with just somebody who's floating free between the lines. So it's no wonder that after these games we say, oh, didn't Foden have a good match? Didn't Doku have a good match? Well, they're picking the ball up in the half space. Shouldn't we be seeing signs of that kind of stuff improving, training ground stuff improving by this stage?
I don't think that this system allows for that. I think that it's a tactical set of trade-offs, right? And you know, we saw a level of resilience last year that was probably fine. Like they were going to be about league average in defending. Like they faced Arsenal and looked competent, which was a bit of a surprise. They look like they weren't too far off on being able to find bits of City to pick at. Like those were two of the top three last year, and they didn't look terrible. They gave up some not great goals against Burnley. There were two of them, but they scored three, so like that was useful. And then Fulham are a very stingy team. Like Fulham's whole remit in life is making things fucking boring. Like it's kind of like the area that they live in. And so for me, I think that Manchester United don't look as bad as last year. Should they be better tactically? Maybe. But man, they married themselves to this cart and this horse, and it is going to take them however far it takes them. There's nothing they can do to blow shit up now and make it make sense. There are no good options. None whatsoever. They stuck themselves in this box, and they spent a ton of money again over these two windows. Like, what are you going to do? Blow it all up? Be like, well, Dorgu could maybe be a left back now, and Ahmad could be a this. And like, look, this is the decision that they made. They're going to see it through for a while. They're going to hope that it gets better. It's probably not going to get that much better, but at least if it's better than last year, you're saying, well, we do have signs of improvement. Now, maybe if they continue to spend, you know, the amount that they spent last summer, every single summer on improving, you know, with world-class stars, and maybe they move a little bit earlier and don't get, you know, everybody's sloppy seconds on the transfer market, they'll get to the point that they're a Champions League team, but it's still going to take another like 2 years. It's been this way all along. Is there a better coach out there that they can get? They don't fucking know. Nobody knows. They keep trying better coaches. And many of these guys are very well regarded before they come to Manchester. So it's a vortex of bad football that's slightly better football than it was last year.
They're trying for Glasner at some stage this season, man. 100%.
14 draws. That'll be awesome. Do that. I love it.
When Glasner has drawn his 16th out of 19 games before Christmas, they'll be like, right, okay, here's our man. But I mean, look, you're right. There are signs of improvement. They've gone from being having a massive negative shot differential a couple of seasons ago.
That was only 2 years ago.
And then a bit more even last season, and then this season it looks like they're going to end up being a positive shots team. The signs are so far anyway. If that happens, like those are all good things. On the City side of things,
yeah,
it was interesting that in the second half especially, they decided to let United have a lot of the ball. I mean, United ended this game with 55% possession and outshot City 13-11. Did that feel like an admission from Pep that City can't exert total control the way they could before? Or do you think it was just kind of, let's conserve our legs a little bit and we'll just play on the counter, and let's be honest, like Haaland's going to end up running in behind every 10 minutes, so it doesn't really matter?
There are times when you have such a big edge on a personnel basis in certain positions that you're like, look, we're going to create this regularly. One of the things that confused me, and maybe I did not watch enough of City last year, but like I was watching the first goal and I was like, wait, did someone invert this on the clip? Like, why is Doku over on that side? Also, like, why is Doku on Luke Shaw? Why? I'm so confused. And then like, you're just like, and also Foden was sort of like on the other side often as well. And they seem to be like sort of happily inverting their front line to pick apart certain matchup problems, which means that like the other guys like need to be in certain spots, to screw that up. And that's where the old legs come in. City have the same issues that they have. I don't think that Rangers like fixes those issues. I'm not sure they have the personnel to take it and make it defensively solid in the midfield, which is where they have the danger, because if they're not solid in the midfield and sort of aggressively pressing, then you get those 1v1s with elite athletes on either their fullbacks or their center backs, which is something that like nobody in the Premier League can handle anymore because the athletes are too good. So I don't know. I'm looking forward to the Champions League games and seeing what Pep does there, because if you remember, like they were on the cusp of not qualifying for Champions League knockouts last year too. They had enough different problems. So we'll see if he's able to resolve some of their issues tactically against lesser athletic sides and it's mostly a Premier League problem, or if this is going to sort of be a ripple that happened like last year where it went throughout, both sets of their competitions, at least their elite competitions.
And maybe Haaland just like digs them out of trouble regularly. Like they've got Arsenal next weekend, and you could easily see the number of times that a ball gets played through and it feels like it should just run harmlessly into the keeper's hands, but Haaland somehow gets to it and scores. It's unbelievable. But it'll be interesting next weekend if you see Calafiori in the situations that you saw Doku in a lot in this game, where he was free out wide. We will see what comes of that. They do seem to have geared themselves even more towards getting everything for Haaland. According to FBref, he's either taken or created 5.7 of City's 7.6 XG so far this season, which is, profitable. But if he gets injured, which has always been the Haaland story, if he gets injured, what happens? I don't know, man. Like I still have absolutely no idea how much faith to have in this Man City side.
No, I think that's fair. And, I'm hoping that things are appropriately faithful going forward for my season outright bet, but I have some concerns.
Okay, well, look, we'll take our leave of two despicable institutions and head over to another despicable institution, Juventus, who faced Inter Milan this weekend in a game that was incredibly boring, apart from the moments where insane goals were going in. I've actually got to give a shout out. I know you've talked in the past about how bad Palace's YouTube channel is. Serie A, their official YouTube channel, they have a 20-minute edit of this game, Juve versus Inter, which I think is super cool. I would love to see more of that stuff. That is how you grow a global profile, in my opinion. About 8 minutes of that is just replays of the goals. But I really advise you, if you haven't seen it, to go and check them out. There were 30 shots in this game for a combined 1.7 expected goals.
It broke my brain. I was like, wait, those numbers don't... I looked at the base numbers and then I checked the stats bomb numbers and I looked at the race chart. I was like, I don't understand this. And then I watched the goals and I was like, oh, this is so Italian. So Italian. It is nothing but set pieces and bangers. It's the NBA analytics profile of how football will be played in the future.
Yeah, you get both Thuram brothers scoring headers in this match. Like
they're like mirror images of each other.
So good. I love it. Like Lilian Thuram on the sideline, like dressed like Ving Rhames in Mission Impossible for some reason. And
I feel like he's the only person in the world should be allowed to wear a split jersey. Like those in moms, right? Lilian Thuram and moms.
Lilian Thuram is allowed to do whatever he wants. I love Lilian Thuram. But like,
fair enough.
It was a weird one. I mean, like, look, it's a huge game, but and also a lot of these teams are adapting to new managers, right? So like in Serie A right now, there are 7 teams that are currently allowing under 1 XG per 90. We're only a couple of games in. 5 of those have new managers. So it feels like a lot of managers are kind of like, we're going to lock it down while we work out what is going on. There's 7 teams compared to 5 in Spain, 5 in the Prem, 2 in the Bundesliga who are under 1 XG conceded per game. But this match, I did think it was kind of weird how spaced Juve were between their backline and their midfield. So like Inter are going to attempt crosses, right? Like we know that. They had more than triple the crosses of Juve in this game. But every time that a ball would go in, the whole Juve team dropped so deep that even if they won the defensive header, it just dropped to somebody on the edge of the box. And as a result, Çalhanoğlu had 6 shots in this game and 2 goals from the edge of the box.
Which is the guy that you don't actually want to be taking range shots, because the one thing that he does really, really well is strike the fucking ball.
Yeah, and it's just like they coming out of this with a 4-3 win is pretty fortunate. Like Inter had nearly 250 final third touches. Juve had under 100. Okay, a lot of bodies between Inter and the goal. Like very hard for them to create quality chances. But I just looked at this match and thought, God, I cannot wait for Conceição and Gyökeres to get into this team, because it was 4 centre-backs, 4 central midfielders. One of those central midfielders was playing wing-back. Like one of them was playing number 10. It was absolutely miserable stuff. And they had 2 passes into the penalty area and 0 carries into the penalty area. How did they score 4 goals? Evil. That's how. Evil. The Slytherins of football. Disgusting.
So as we know, like tactical football is an evolutionary thing and it's adaptive. Like this team does this. What is your response to that? This team does that. What is your response to that? Like the trend becomes XYZ. Weirdly enough, the Premier League has all decided that long throws are a thing that they're going to do this year. I don't know why this year. I don't know why it wasn't in past years, but like I'm seeing it all over the place. And it's very, very strange because like I've been on this publicly talking about it since 2016. We did it before then privately. And then like I taught the courses in sort of 19 and 20 a bunch to like most of the English speaking football space. It's taken until now for everybody to be like, yeah, man, like everybody's going to do long throws. Really, really freaky. With the long shots, like the wrinkle that we always talked about was like, once you get to the point that you take fewer shots that are from long range, so you're only taking good shots effectively, you are going to get adaptations from the defense that like cuts this off. They've tried to congest the space, basically from the penalty spot backwards, like because that's where, all of the best shots are. When that happens, then you open up the space around the edge of the box for long range shooters to take it. And then you only want your good shooters to be able to strike those balls. Well, Çalhanoğlu is one of those. And so if teams are regularly giving the elite ball strikers shots from the edge of the 18, and what these guys do in training is crazy. Like when they're not under pressure and they're just able to pick their spots, like the talent on display of some of these guys is just absolutely ridiculous. You get into game-like situations and it deteriorates a little bit. This game was a really funky thing where it was basically like, just set pieces and just long-range shots from basically the edge of the box for the most part that happened to go in corners and were struck really, really well. And it just felt like it was an intentional adaptation for how the teams were going to defend them.
We saw something similar to this in the Arsenal game, right? Like teams now know that Arsenal is such a threat from defensive set pieces that they can't really sacrifice a bunch of bodies to, leave someone high up or whatever. So Arsenal had a bunch of shots from the top of the box in their game against Forest. Zubimendi had 2 or 3, and Waneri had one that was charged down. Like there were a bunch of them because suddenly that's the zone where there's value to be had, right?
Yep. And that's the adaptation for how this works. When teams are shutting down one element and you're continuing to be excellent at executing that element, it opens up some other element to be able to do. Also, like, we saw just a moment of beauty from Calafiori to Eza to Gyökeres that felt like it didn't exist most of last year. If it did, it was to Saka on a much wider basis where he'd immediately be double teamed. But because you now have some balance between the right and left side, and Madueke was like unplayable on his side as well.
It was unreal.
Yeah, and like suddenly you're like, oh, this is. I'm not sure that we have good options anymore. And if you've got a center back or two center backs that can strike that ball, or if you've got a Zubimendi and a Calafiori that can strike those balls, like, now you get to play that transitional game that so rarely it felt like Arsenal were able to last year. And then this year, like, you've seen it very early on. Whether they're going to be able to continue that, whether teams are like, oh, okay, we need to actually fix it back to more normal style because we can't overplay XYZ. I don't know. But it has to be at least be a positive sign. Arsenal spent a bunch of money. Some of it seems to be useful. And Zubimendi and Gyökeres having the goals is, it's a good sign for them.
Yeah, I think it's interesting stuff. It's interesting to see Zubimendi get 2 goals in a game, like his first ever brace in a match. But again, Arsenal are trying to find a way to become more direct. And whenever Arsenal sign a player who's like good in transition, then obviously everybody says, "Oh, but Arsenal don't play that way." And you think, but if Arsenal do want to play that way, they probably need to sign some guys who are good at playing that way. Well, now they've got a whole transition lineup that they can run out, which in the last stages of the Champions League, for example, nobody's going to want to see Eza, Madueke, Saka, or Martinelli and Gyökeres running at them. Like, it's going to be miserable for teams. I did want to ask you about Aston Villa.
Okay.
Slightly less positive news.
It's positive for me because, like, I've been waiting for, like, the wheels to fall off of this this for a while.
You've been a denier. You haven't been believing the Emery hype train.
Not for a single instance, and probably lost a bunch of money on not believing that.
Yeah, so they drew 0-0 at Everton, but I mean they escaped with a 0-0 at Everton, which in itself is a damning statement. They're in the relegation zone. They've got the second most XG allowed in the league after Burnley. They've got the second least XG created in the league after Wolves, and they've not scored a goal yet. How many teams in Europe's top 5 leagues have not scored a goal so far, Ted?
Is it just Villa?
No, there are 4.
Okay, because some of the teams have only played 3 games.
But 1 of 4 after 4 games. And I mean, look, it's been a reasonably tough start. Like, they had Newcastle, Brentford, Palace, and Everton, and the 2 weaker teams in that group have been away. The 2 tougher ones have been at home. So there wasn't like an easily winnable fixture in there. But and they've had some injuries.
I love the idea of walking into, is it Hill Dickinson? I feel like I have to use the proper name now.
I think so.
Hill Dickinson absolutely sounds like a place that college football would be played. It sounds like much less like a place that Everton have, like, sort of on the coast of England. Walking into Hill Dickinson as like, we are definitely the underdogs here. We need to be really careful. And then proving your point, letting Everton take 20 shots to 7. To their credit, they've only given up 4 goals. So, sure. I guess that part's working. 4 goals across 4 matches isn't the worst way to do it, but Jesus Christ, it is turgid.
When they haven't been able to field their first choice midfield that much, like Camara hasn't played that much, Onana hasn't played that much, Tielemans has been out a little bit, but and at least in attack, reinforcements are coming, right? Like, they've got Sancho, they've got Harvey Elliott. In the long run, playing some combination of Watkins, Gesson, Rodgers, Elliott, Sancho, like, that should be okay. But it right now they're taking very few shots, very low XG per shot. I worry about them. If you're in this position after 4 games, then I just think that, European football ceases to be your concern very, very quickly. And you're thinking, like, are we going to get in the top half?
Yeah, I think that, if they look at themselves as last year's Man United, and if they're floating between 15 and 10, like that's probably what you're looking at. And they had a really good end of the season last year, which is why this is kind of surprising. But it's also like a pretty regular recurring theme in Unai Emery's sort of third season at places where they're like, oh yeah, okay, we just don't seem to play that well anymore, and we go in overly defensive in a lot of places, and you've spent a lot of money, but the results don't seem to be that good. Like, if you look over sort of 3-4 years, like Villa spent a fuck ton of money, and they say that they're PSR constrained, but like that just feels like excuses for pretty poor squad management. Like, they sold like John Duran for a ton last January. I don't know. I don't think they're going to be good this year. I think they're worse than I expected them to be. But given these first early matches, like it seems that it's part of the recurring Emery thematic where that third season just ends up being quite terrible, and fans hate it every moment.
They just have they haven't really been amazing in any regard since he took over. It was never like, oh, the defense is just locked down or the attack is stomping and we're giving up chances. Like every now and then they would just have a total disaster game. I still think that if they can get Kamara and Onana on field in central midfield, like a lot, then that'll be helpful. But this is always the Kamara issue, which is he's good. He's never fit. He's just never fit. It's so frustrating. And so
they take risks in their squad building because they needed to, but this is a little bit like Maresca complaining about, oh, we didn't have, some of our guys had like knocks or they weren't great. And you're like, look, it's the whole of the league. It's the whole of the season. And they were away for international breaks. Everybody has to deal with this. Villa spent a ton of money. Chelsea spent a ton of money. Like, welcome to last year for half of these teams. Arsenal, like all of their best players were injured at various points. Tottenham had nobody that could play for half of the year in their back line. So, it's just how football operates. But, everybody wants excuses. Like for Villa, the thing that used to drive me most insane about Emery is they would not play for the first 45 minutes. They would just like deaden the game for 45 minutes. But you had a squad advantage across, all but 3 teams during that period of time. You're doing it wrong. There are ways that I'm sure that they are doing it wrong and will continue to do it wrong because like they have not changed their stripes.
If you wrote a relatively negative season preview of Aston Villa, you'd probably be feeling pretty smug right now. Though I taught myself down from it. I tried to be nicer because every time in the past I've been negative about Aston Villa and also about Wolves. There's something about the Midlands club. Oh my God, I've just had months and months of shit on Twitter. So this time I was just like, okay, well, let's make the case where everything goes right. And so far, I hate to point this out, guys, but that's actually not been the case. So you made reference to something just then that I really wanted to pick up on, though, because it's the early stage of the season. The numbers can only tell us so much. Yeah. We're still learning about all these teams. So I thought it'd be a good opportunity to go over some of the questions that we get for you that are more about like the business of doing analytics. So you talked there about long throws and how long it seems to have taken those to percolate through the football ecosystem. What I wanted to know is how you go about trying to put these ideas over, because routinely, right, you're going into clubs and what happens? Do you talk to analytics guys first, and then maybe like how do you get to the point where you're having an impact on the coaches and on the head coach, and how do you have to adjust the way that you present stuff along that route for them to basically not think that you're like a dipshit American who just wants to talk about algorithms or something?
So usually the only times that I'm brought into a place are either via the ownership director of football or via the coach themselves. And that's because it has to happen at that level for us to have any impact. And this is on the set pieces side, but also like recruitment side is the same sort of way. It's like, how would you do best practice in the modern world? Do you need to translate this stuff to be right? So because we're starting at that level, like sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes coaches will tell you one thing and then do fuck all on the other side of it. They're trying to figure out, how do I get these people to leave me alone? And this includes the owner, who often has like, an incentive for their team to do well. And they want to see them play in a style of play that they think is correct. while also making sure that the coach understands, like, hey, you get the choices at the end of the day, but we need to make sure that you are agreeing to whatever style that we think is correct, that we agree before we hired you. Like that's like, it's not like you get an owner coming in and like they're trying to change everything. It's like, this is what happens before we hire you. This is what we agree is going to occur. This is what you're going to train to some extent. So this is how we're going to play, and you're going to train to play that way. So anyway, this is where it all starts at. And you have to have something with enough pull to even get you through the door there. And sometimes the coaches want to learn for themselves, which has also been brilliant. Like that's always a good sign, because they're like, look, I think I need this for the rest of my career or for my future. And because I'm just taking on additional info, which is how you can see it, not as stats and data are scary, but this is just useful objective info for me to be able to process. And then we have to figure out, how do we get that down to the team? So once you get the coach potentially on board, or once you start presenting to the coach, a lot of times what I did historically was like, hey, you think the set pieces stuff might be weird. And before recent years, it still was like, oh, you think it might just be for the Tony Pulises and the Sam Allardyces of the world. But the reality is, when someone like Diego Simeone installs that in his team, and they score 0.8 goals a game from set pieces alone, they manage to beat a team headed by Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi to a league title. And they regularly end up in the Champions League late stages of as well. So semifinals often, or finals. So you sort of get some buy-in there. And then you're like, okay, and this is something that I did inside of a game. And this is one of our plays in this year. And then this is Liverpool running this exact same play 3 years later. And Virgil van Dijk scores the header. Like exact same play that I designed, right? And this is why that worked, and this is what we're going to try and do for you. So now you're trying to connect the dots for credibility. And they're like, yes, I worked at little old Brentford. And for years, Brentford weren't actually in the Premier League, right? And so they're like, well, I kind of heard the Brentford story. It's a little bit exciting, but you haven't had that success. Well, it's really hard to get into the Premier League with a small budget, and it might take years to be able to do that. So you're kind of to create these connective credibility dots all over. And then you show up and you're like, I'm here to help make you more successful. And it's like getting a university professor out of a very good university to come and teach to your high school. And we can say it in as clear language as we want to. We can talk via video. We can talk via the stats. We can talk by what we're trying to achieve. We can show you my whole CV. And as some people believe you and they want to learn, and some people are like, please just leave me alone. That is the whole process around that. And it's been alternately successful and terrible. And usually when it goes terrible, it happens in exactly the same way. The coaches find some reason to reject it because they don't want any sort of interference. The coach then gets fired because his team doesn't score enough goals, period. And often you were brought in to help them score goals from this phase of the game. And then you work again with another coach. Eventually, they either get on board or you stop working with that team because they're like, I give up.
Given you've talked about this before, where you say like some coaches really want to learn it and some don't, but are we tending with the ones even who want to learn it? Are we not tending towards a situation where their wanting to learn it is really just being okay with handing it off to somebody else? Like you're my offensive set piece coordinator and you're my defensive set piece coordinator, and I don't think about that shit at all.
So it's partly that, but you have to train it. And if you don't get the training time, which is 10 to 15 minutes per session, then it doesn't work. Like, because we know these things take timing. They take, Raya behind the defenders, like moving them around, like to say, hey, here's your angler. Or you get, the goalkeeper at Liverpool, I think Alisson on the Szoboszlai goal was directing their secondary wall to be able to cut Raya's vision down, which is something that we argued for years with our coaches about. I was like, guys, if you don't believe me, one, ask your goalkeepers whether they prefer to have no blockers or blockers in their way. And the goalkeeper's like, I fucking hate the blockers. Like, I hate the extra wall that they put so that I can't pick up the ball. And two, stand behind the goal. Like, watch what happens and like see if you can pick up the ball or not, because this is literally the problem we're trying to create. So once you end up with so many instances that you were correct, and then you're trying to guide them as to like, okay, now this is the way to help implement this. This is what you want to do in training to be able to do this. If you want, I can get on the grass. I can literally show this to like how it works for your team, how it works for my team. I can show your academy coaches. Like, we can create all of this. But this is like mid 6 figures a year that we get paid to do this, because I don't know if you know what a Premier League assistant coach gets paid, but it's like 1.5 to 2 million at like even a reasonable level. It's a ton of money, because a lot of these coaches are like 10 million and some of them are 25 million. The minimum that any of my like good set piece coaches get paid in most of their roles is between 250 and 500,000. And so that's why we kind of had to stop teaching the course, because a course at like 2,500 feels like people are like, oh, that's so expensive. And I was like, you can literally make 100 times that if you become good at doing this work. And I don't know how to justify that teaching versus the knowledge, because if you create a single Premier League goal, it's worth over £3 million right now.
Yeah. So it pays for itself like many times over doing the program with the club. But okay, so when you see something like Alisson directing like his players on an attacking free kick like that, what do you see some of the edges that you guys worked out being taken away, or do you see it more like the normal tactical back and forth of football? Okay, well, they can adjust to this, but then adjustments will be made in a different way. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do. So there's like two phases, right? Early adopters will continue to have edges that sustain themselves much longer than you might expect. So a team like an Arsenal with a Nico Jover have been able to sustain that even when teams knew that Arsenal were like good at scoring from set pieces. And part of that is like the coordination elements are pretty big. Part of it is a coaching knowledge and being able to get better at your job. This is what they're presenting as a defense. This is how we might break it down. These are the wrinkles that we do. So like there is an element of like from zero absolute knowledge to where we're at now. Some of that's gone. But there's another side of it that says that like it is adaptive. And when you look at how the NFL works, like you will see different things come into vogue and different types of offenses or different types of defenses have success from a year-to-year basis. But usually that doesn't sustain itself too much, the second year or the third year, the fourth year, especially if it's easy to tell what you're doing. And so then you start to figure out disguises for what you're doing, or you make them think you're going to do one thing, and then you do something quite different that now ends up open because they end up overplaying and overcommitting to that. And what I find in set pieces, and particularly when we call it restarts, is that there's a depth that we just barely scratch the surface on. If you let me go into a league and they only do man marking, I'm going to destroy that league. I will absolutely destroy it, because like man marking, we will spoof and we will mess up. We will get bad matchups. We will just create situations where we have free runners inside of the box all the time. Defenses have gotten better about that, but like they're still in the early stages and no one knows how to defend a long throw. I don't even know how to defend a long throw because we don't see it enough to figure out what the patterns look like to defend that better. I have some ideas, but I can't tell you that like I'm absolutely right. So the concepts here are much deeper, much like when we talked about like the passing models like 6 weeks ago. And I was like, oh, let's go to school because like this is how these things got developed. Expected goals is not every shot's alike. Passing means not every pass is alike. How do you create those types of models from data? In this, it's very specific play design. What are they presenting us? What are the weaknesses they have from a player by player basis? Oh, this fullback's really bad in the air. Do we have somebody that we think will mark or he'll mark? And can we isolate them? Like that's pretty intriguing. Can we create movement? Can we create it so that you simply cannot watch the ball and the players that you want to mark at the same time? That kind of happened with Garnacho at the weekend, where basically Brentford had a long throw. Garnacho thought that he was ball oriented. He lost his marker on the blind side, and then his marker was the open player to be able to score the goal as the long throw kind of came through off of a deflected thing. All of these situations come back around to it's really hard to defend stuff when teams are smart and active and trying to make it hard for you. Most of the time, they didn't even train it. When I started this in 2014, 2015, we asked all of the coaches that we talked to in world football, and Matthew was like, going on this big spree of being able to talk to people. How much do you train set pieces? I'm like, oh yeah, maybe like 10, 15 minutes. Like, oh wow, a session? That's incredible. Like, no, that's a week. We do it like on a Friday on our last run through before like we go do the game. And we are like, oh, that's incredible. That's amazing. And I want to give credit where it's due, because like I love talking about this stuff and I feel like I have a lot of expertise from a decade ago. But Gianni Vio was the person that was most passionate about this and really broke it down for me. And he ended up creating a lot of the elements that we continued to push advantage for Brentford's teams and then onward into the set pieces stuff. And obviously, we're not the only ones to talk about this. It's been talked about for ages. Tony Pulis was outstanding at this. Sir Alex, in his last 2 years, learned to do set pieces well. Those last 2 seasons he was at United, they won titles that they had no business winning because they scored a ton of goals off of set pieces that they had never done before. And that's because Ferguson became friends with Tony Pulis and they started talking about it. It's amazing. It's so
That's
cool.
interesting, because the narrative was like, I mean, I know this will be a part of it, but obviously part of the narrative was Van Persie arrived and suddenly they had like world-class left-footed delivery. And obviously that is a factor. But
you had your forwards taking delivery on the corners. Coaches argued with me about this for a decade. Like, no, we can't possibly take our forwards out of the box. They have to be able to be. It's like the delivery matters more than the person on the end of it. And so you had Rooney taking right-footed deliveries and Van Persie taking left-footed deliveries. And you had Patrice Evra score 4 goals with his head off of corners. It's mad. Sorry,
man. No. I like it. Given that you aren't teaching the course anymore because you're now like the set piece Scrooge, if you're a young analyst, and obviously like we get a lot of messages from young analysts, right? And we met a bunch of them when we had a meetup. Is this an area where it's worth sitting down and kind of trying to work stuff out from first principles here? Because it feels like you can make yourself valuable quite quickly, certainly at the lower levels, by being smart about this stuff and thinking about it in ways where other people might have that slightly dismissive, oh yeah, put it in the mixer and maybe one of our center backs gets it.
Yeah, there's an element to like Madden plays and American football plays that like if you've played those things, you're like a little bit turned on to it already. There are people like Stuart Reed out there who actually like became a set piece analyst and coach because of the stuff that I published. Some of my old articles, like 1 or 2 of them, are still out there as well. Like I haven't deleted them from the internet, so you can read those. And then there's a couple of courses from people that will teach them occasionally. I don't know how good those courses are because I haven't felt the need to take them. I probably should go back and review them sometime soon if they're available. And you know, I've been preaching this since 2016 when I came back out of Brentford and Midland. I was like, this is going to happen. Coaches are going to have real set piece analysts or set piece coaches in the same way we said that, you know, there's going to be a hiring spree in football of people that are statistical analysts because there are not enough of them in the world and they desperately need more. And this is actually more true in non-English language spaces than it is in English, because English has been the language that all this stuff has been taught in for the most part, although Johnny's Italian and he wrote a book in Italian. So I would say that, you know, if you're really interested, these elements are the key connectors there, and they'll start to open you up to stuff like scour the internet for whatever's there and then just start practicing it. And at the lower levels, if teams are like not that interested in defending set pieces or have no idea what's going on, it could be really successful in the same way that the pressing football is more valuable lower down because players are less good on the ball. They have worse first touches and they need more time. And if you give them less time, you tend to be more effective down in that space.
It's really interesting stuff. And I think that people would be interested to hear you talk a little bit more about what it's like to work with clubs behind the scenes, what it's like to try and get these ideas over. So if anybody has a question that they would like me to ask Ted in this segment on the show, then please drop it in the comments below, or you can message us on Twitter, because we get asked these questions kind of privately in emails all the time. It's much more interesting to talk about them in the public space, I think.
Maybe next time we should talk about how players started to take control of their own data profiles and then use that to then determine their careers. Because we've seen it both in men's and women's football. It's been happening for quite a long time, but it definitely came back into the forefront in like just the last couple of years. It's been pushed by a couple of companies that have consultancies, but it's something that's really cool. And I think that it's a good story for people, and there'll be names that they know.
Cool. Yeah. Anybody who followed the Miles Lewis Skelly renewal story earlier in the year, that was all kind of public around it as well. And look, after that, I'll teach you how to do YouTube thumbnail faces, or I can teach you degree level Latin. What? Just these are super lucrative skills. I've got
one of those is lucrative. The other one is dead.
one of them's lucrative if your face is Mr. Beast's face.
Okay.
Like it's not lucrative if you're an ordinary person. Before we get out of here, I know there was something that Flick said about Yamal this weekend, which I know that you flagged up, is quite spicy. He was a bit cross, Hansi Flick.
Yes. So this isn't the first time that we have heard a club coach complain about treatment of their players on international duty. For Patrick and I are both Arsenal fans, and I used to dread every single time that Van Persie would go play for the Dutch national team because I knew that he was coming back injured. But it isn't just that. It happened all the time. Like the international teams have different protocols than the club teams, and players have some level of fragility. And also, if you put them on long international flights, like their recovery is worse. Like even if you're in kind of a nice set of seat business class or something like that, you still end up feeling the fatigue and the problems from bouncing back and forth between time zones, everything else. So it is an inherent challenge in footballers that play regularly for their national team, that they tend to get a little more injured, not just because they're playing more games, but also because the treatment of them tends to be different and the training tends to be different as well. So that's problem number one. That's just international football. But problem number two is much more significant than that. And it is a problem of super talented young players whose bodies have not fully matured being played for lots and lots of minutes. And Lamine Yamal might be the most talented young player in the world. And he is almost one of the most talented players in the world, period. So his teams, both being Spain and Barcelona, want to play him a lot. They love having him on the pitch. Like they know that he's really good. He's able to do all sorts of things that almost nobody else in the world is able to do. But the problem is he's still just 18 right now. And when you put young players in those situations where their body's not fully matured, they have to play against adults all the time. Their recovery tends to be worse. They are more fragile in many cases than their counterparts that are much older, that have, fully fleshed out frames. They tend to be not as muscular. They are facing men that are bigger and more muscular. They have less weight. The muscles also tend to help with your recovery because they absorb things. And so all of that is an issue. And then you get the fact that if you're a super talented, young, athletic player that's technically skilled, you get fouled more often as well. Combine all of that together, and no one actually feels like they're taking care of Yamal for the long term. They feel like they're trying to maximize what they get out of this young kid every single week. And Flick came to the fore and wanted to say some things about that. He's like, Spain beat the crap out of their opponents. They were up like 3-0 in both of those games very quickly. Yeah. He was out there all the time. No one is paying attention to his workload. And now he's come back and he's going to be injured for a while. But like we saw with Saka as well, like there is just an accumulation of playing with niggling injuries and also being highly fouled that eventually like stunts your career. And it has happened as it's a tale as old as time across football, but it's happening more in the spotlight now because these young kids break out. They're incredible. And then we see all of this stuff repeat itself. The one that sort of made me saddest, although Arsenal had a couple of ones, like Arsenal used to have kids come through their academy or guys that they would scout around Europe, they bring in. So Fabregas was one of those early ones that played super young, super precocious, got fouled, had injury issues throughout his career, happened to be the type of player that was able to play, sort of further back as he went on because he's such an incredible passer and mover of the ball. Jack Wilshere is the one that like really got to me though. Like Wilshere got just demolished over and over again. It felt like he wasn't protected. And as a teenager, he was one of the most fouled players in the league. Yamal's very similar to that. So Flick coming to the front and saying, guys, this has to get better. This is ridiculous. Spain can't just overwork the player when they don't need to. That seems absurd. But they're two entirely different groups. And a kid like Yamal probably can't even barely defend himself to the groups that want him to play a ton because he wants to continue to play. And he doesn't know how to like stand up for himself as well. And his representation, people would then get irritated about it. Oh, well, your dad came in and said this and he has no right to do that. I'm like, kid's 18, man. Who else is going to stand up for him? Like he's still learning how to do everything in his life. So I don't know. I thought that was a really important issue that we see regularly. And I respect Flick for saying it, but it's not that like Barcelona don't also overplay him.
Sure. But I mean, well, and they've got a bunch of guys like that. They've had the same thing with Pedri. They had the same thing with Ansu Fati. Like, it happens time and time again. It's always the thing that you think about with Ronaldo and Messi, right? Which is that with them, we were lucky because they were remarkable, not just for their gifts, but how fit they were all the time. We didn't lose 2 years of their careers to injuries like we did with someone like Owen. Obviously lost a lot of his career.
Yep.
Someone like Shearer sat out like a year and a half at his peak.
Yeah.
You know, we've been very fortunate that guys like those and also people like Salah have had such consistent injury records. But some of these people as well, even if they stay fit, we end up with a situation more like Eden Hazard, right? Where they hit 30 and it's like, they are done. You are done. You've played every minute up till then. You've got nothing left.
Like Walcott, like Sterling. Sterling was precocious young, played a ton when he was young. He just does not seem to have that. Yeah, doesn't seem to have that burst, right? And sometimes it's injury accumulation. Sometimes it's just like your body it matured early and then it deteriorated early. And that curve just happened at a different point in your age set than you see for most players. But so I think it's something to be aware of. And I think that obviously, happening at one of the two biggest teams in Spain and having their notable head coach coming out and taking a stand is very useful. I don't think it'll necessarily change how other teams treat these footballers who they're playing or who they're paying very well for their work. But whenever you see a player trying to defend themselves a little bit from overwork or saying like, hey, I've got an injury, I don't need to do this. Just respect that, because they do need to protect their careers and their livelihood for the long term and not just what happens on the pitch for them this season.
Mm-hmm. Right, well, I think that wraps us for today's show. Thank you very much for being here, everybody, for watching us on YouTube. If you're doing so, then please do follow us, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, and you will get our videos. You get told about our videos, I guess. I don't know how it works. You can also leave us a 5-star review in your favorite podcast app and send any questions that you have in the comments or on social media. We'll see a bunch of you on Wednesday, by which time the Champions League will be going. We're also going to try and take some longer tours around Europe this season. So our Wednesday episode will try and cover a little bit more of Europe's top 5 leagues. So if you've got any questions on that front as well, let us know.
And if you hadn't heard, we're going to add a third show weekly.
Woof.
We'll let you know. We might even give you a mailing list to sign up to be amongst the first to hop in the queue. But yes, we're going to add a third show. It's not going to be public, though. It's going to be for the Patreon. But yeah, Patrick felt like he wasn't getting enough love and affection, and so he needed to trot himself out there one more time.
Well, I need to put something special behind the paywall. That's what it is. So if you are a pay pig, then please sign up to our mailing list, and you can also give us money. Thank you very much for being here. We will see you next time. Bye bye.
My son's been doing this lately. He's like, Dad, I need to watch the lowbrow YouTube people talk football just so I can appreciate and laugh at them because I don't know, it invigorates him for some reason. I feel like that's what you just did.
I don't. This guy wasn't lowbrow. Like this guy was a tactico, and he was talking very intelligently. It's just very funny to hear someone go, yeah, we had chances in the first half, but we couldn't make the most of it. We couldn't even beat the first man on our crosses. And I was just like, I forgot how pleasurable it is to hear a Manchester United fan be really sad. I hadn't enjoyed it for a while, but it was nice to luxuriate in it, I think.
Did you like the newsletter?
Your newsletter?
Yeah, mine, obviously.
Yeah. It was interesting because I thought, I don't know, like the set piece thing.
Yeah,
is like, are we at the point where that's a problem we need to solve yet? Like,
no, not unless there's a ton of time wasting. You remember when Tony Pulis's teams, the Stoke teams, would get a set piece and then they would waste the other half of the game by slow throw-ins and low, as low volume of energy and ball and playtime as possible. As long as teams are playing at a reasonable pace, I don't think there is a problem.
It's just like when a team wins the Champions League only scoring set piece goals, when the Premier League is getting crushed every year by set pieces, and nobody's people are just kicking for touch all the time, then maybe I would think it is an issue. But even then, I'd kind of be like, isn't the answer here for the defending teams to get better at set pieces and make it less of an advantage rather than for us to change the rules around it?
Well, I mean, maybe there are rules that need to be changed because sometimes you
Sure.
realize the rules are actually broken. And I think the throw-ins, the rule is broken, but nobody does throw-ins how like I think they should be done. So we'll see at some point if somebody like really starts exploiting them in the way that I think they can be. But otherwise, it's like, look, you have a set piece because the defense did something to generate it. Like, let the attacking team execute within the rules or punish them equally. And for years and years, like the punishment was always around, oh, you touched the goalie, right? Or you managed to like not you fell down when someone was holding on to you. Oh, well, that's
Yeah.
probably a foul on you. Like it's just absurd how skewed they were towards the defending team when the defending team was the one that earned, gave them the foul or the corner or the throw in the first place. Now that we've sort of like readjusted it so that smart teams can attack in a reasonable fashion, everyone's like, oh, I don't know if that seems right. And it's really just their brains being conservative about what they've seen in football for the last 25, 30 years, which I don't think is like, it's certainly not in the rule book. And for a long, long time, teams were like, well, you cannot obstruct anybody. I was like, well, you can't fucking hold anybody either, but you let them get away with that every single play.
Yes, I agree. I mean, I've got to say as well with these kinds of conversations, I'm also just not that interested because they tend to be pushed by Americans. And I just think that like there is something there where I think Americans are a lot more open to changing the rules because they're like, well, maybe we could change the rules in X or Y way and it might make the game better. Some of those, like having extra referees, I think are quite sensible.
Yeah.
But they ignore the fact that, like, it's never going to happen because the game is insanely conservative. Like, you can make small changes, and we've seen, obviously, rule changes come in. But generally speaking, most of the rule changes are really small and it's glacially slow. And so whenever I see this stuff, I'm always like,
sport.
It's not going to happen.
It's a really good popular sport. It actually is. People like complaining about it too, which is also a thing that happens. I mean, I think at some point you might see some small adjustments in rules. Sometimes it's simply just enforce the rules how they're supposed to be, or don't enforce the rules in a way that's sensible, right? So like the Spanish handball rule in the box, everybody who watches that hates it. Even the Spaniards hate it. But like, they just kept enforcing it in that way. And everyone's like, no, this makes no sense. Like, this is just dumb. And then you're like, why in the world does that league have like 50% more penalties? And it's because players learned that they could kick it up at somebody's hand occasionally and then get credit for a penalty. So yeah, that's people will exploit the rules however they're written. And if you change the rules, then we'll find new ways to exploit it. So it's really about minimizing damage and making the product on the pitch as enjoyable as possible. But that's often not how it seems to work out. There are like way bigger things. Fucking Arsene Wenger, who you and I kind of love, even though he also got very conservative in his old age. He's like, oh, we should get rid of throw-ins. We should only have kick-ins. It's like, no, this is dumb too. Come on. Like, we're just replacing dumb with dumb.
Yeah. But then they were just trialing it. Weren't they trialing it in like the second or third division in the Netherlands or something? They were like, who cares what's going on there? We'll just like hoof the ball in. It doesn't matter. But I think there's a good argument for, for trialing this kind of stuff. It's just that whenever I see some people propose changes that are so thoroughgoing that I think a lot of people would see this as profanity, as like a serious attack on the sport. Like, for example, stopping the clock when it goes out of play, which obviously would then necessitate a shorter game. You can't do 90 minutes if you're going to stop the clock. Like, football fans would just never go for this because it's just too laborious and they like the sense of flow, even if in practice that's not actually what they get. So whenever I see like rule changes, I think, surely we want to intervene the minimum possible amount. And we want games to flow as much as possible. Like that's why it's annoying to see the way the handball rule is enforced in Spain or sometimes in the Champions League, because you think, well, nobody wants a game to be decided by whatever it is, like a 0.78 like XG chance just because like the ball hit somebody's hand as they were running away from goal at the top of the box or something. Like, it's bullshit. No one wants that.
Yeah, so the two things that I would change about football, like we're not anywhere close to on topic, but the two things I would change about football, one is penalties only occur in a limited box, and then if they're outside of that box, and it should actually be an arc, But like penalties only occur within that arc. And then otherwise, like you take the free kick from the spot of the foul. Like very, very simple. So like, let's just make that happen. That then gets rid of most of the issues around penalties. It then like penalizes things in a different way. Like if I had a follow up to that, I would then say that like actually penalties should be from a different location and there should be 2 different spots, either left or right. And you have to choose from that. And we would find what the distance on that location is based on like doing these experiments. So this is an experimental thing. Like what outcome do you actually want? How often does everybody think is fair for someone to convert a penalty? Like let's make it more of a skill issue and not a 78% issue, right?
Yeah.
Like I think that's like quite interesting. And that then frees us up to have like more instances where we could call penalties and then you have that moment of drama, right? And football's all about the drama. Like the thing that people get very irritated about VAR is that taking away a goal, which is a huge release because it's such a low expenditure or low event sport. Like that's the frustration, right? Like we want to be able to release it and feel like it's real. We don't want to have to reel that shit back in. Like that, it costs you emotional energy. So that's one. Like let's fix penalties, and there's probably 2 different ways I would potentially fix penalties. The second one is there is a UEFA-wide tournament, and most of the teams, so all of the teams in the big leagues get to participate, and then something like half of the teams in most of the smaller top leagues get to participate in this thing. It is knockout. It is randomized draw. And you have this as it goes like throughout the course of the season. Get rid of the fucking conference league. This then allows all of the countries that want more participation, right? And it also allows UEFA to get like really interesting elements of the TV deals inside of there. So say you get like, you know, this 6th place team from Croatia that happens to get one of the giants, or not Croatia. Say it's the Netherlands, right? Like say someone scruffy in the Netherlands like finally gets to see Real Madrid come play them, like once in a lifetime thing, or they play at Real Madrid. That's awesome. Same for Denmark, right? Like Denmark teams like go up and then they come back down. Like you see Copenhagen pretty regularly. You very rarely see the other teams. Norway, you know, you might get one team out of Norway that ever participates every 5 years. But like, say we're now in like a half the league situation. And this is how it works. The stories that you get out of this, the Cinderella stories, are so exciting. The breadth of fan participation that you get out of this is also so exciting. Teams have to take it at least a little bit seriously, because if, you know, one of these teams fields their second 11 and they get knocked out in a one-off, the press coverage from that is electric. It's so good. And it happens, right? So say last season, Chelsea had to go up to Bodo Glimt and they failed. Or not Chelsea, but Manchester City or somebody else, right? Bodo Glimt's a tough place to go play.
Sure.
Say that happens. That's amazing. That's such a sexy story. And you get to do that over and over and over again. That's what happens in the NCAA tournament. It's the world's best gambling thing, which also, you know, helps power some level of fan interest. But it is just the best press and broadest participation that you can get in European-wide football. And I think that should just be like a slam dunk. Get rid of the fucking conference league. Get rid of the Carabao Cup in order to free up the time to be able to do this, because it's all garbage.
Yes. I hate the Carabao Cup.
Exactly. Like nobody wants to see that stuff. It just happens to exist because it was a relic from before. So get rid of that garbage, or just like crunch it down into the lower leagues that aren't participating in this UEFA-wide one. Replace that schedule slot with the full of the Premier League. So Burnley's going to fucking like Real Madrid. How cool is that, right? That's awesome. Like this is the type of thing that needs to happen. And that's my second one. And that's the one that I'm most passionate about, because I'm sure that UEFA are wrong right now.
I would love to see like championship teams play teams in the top flights of other divisions, because some of those championship teams would give them a fucking game, man. Like, yeah, look, I'm in favor of doing anything that is geared towards making my life as a spectator more enjoyable. Yes, like, what frustrates me is how often the questions don't seem to be about that at all. Like, that's everybody's issue with VAR. Like, ultimately, like you said, it just makes it less. You see a goal go in and you wait. You think, well, I'll wait to enjoy it. Okay, it's been given. Okay, now I can celebrate. Like this is a good thing about scoring from a corner. Like 99% of the time, it gets allowed.
VAR disallowed is a ruined orgasm, and that's a good point to start the show.
Boy, oh boy. All right.